is Mr. Ajay Tripathi, who is a two-time GSoCer from the year 2019 and 2020. We hope to have a great session today. And before the session begins, I request you all to keep your mics on mute in order to avoid any disturbance. Also, if there are any questions that you have, you may put them in the chat box, or otherwise, we are also going to have a Q&A segment at the end. Over to you, Ajay.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me here. And first of all, before we begin, usually these presentations, we are all used to having these in person, but because of COVID, we are here online. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I love informal sessions. I love getting into discussions. So feel free to ask even silly questions. Actually, I like to say that there are no silly questions. It's just that something that new that comes to you seems silly to you, but it's not. So feel free to be informal, feel free to ask questions. And I'm going to begin with my presentation on first type in FOSS. So first of all, I'd like to start about talking about me and my relationship with open source. So I have been working with open source for 3+ years now, but I started contributing officially to the first big repository in 2018 when I was selected as a FOSSEE fellow in 2018. Then there is I started working on Google Coding. I was a mentor in 2018 in Google Coding. And then, of course, as Sonal mentioned, I was in a Google Summer of Code in student in 2019 and again in 2020. So I have a good experience of working with open source, and since I started only 3 years ago, I have a lot of knowledge of how to get started as well. Next, let's talk about you. So this session is for you if you want to learn to be a contributor in open source. It's ideally for people who are in first and second year of their college. If you're not in first or second year of your college, you might already know a lot of it, but there might be some cool things for you still. Then there is an expectation that you have a basic understanding of software development. Even if you don't, we're not going to get into a lot of software development today, but it will be easier for you to get things. Now let's talk about this session. And in this session, we are going to discuss what open source is, why would you want to work in open source, what do you need to get started, where do you contribute. So first, when even after people when they find out what open source is, they have a hard time finding out an organization where they can contribute. So I would be discussing how to find that organization. Next, after people find out what organization they want to work with, they get confused with how to get to code from the first welcome page to writing code for that organization. So I would be discussing some points for that as well. Then I have noticed a lot of freshers and people who are getting into open source have some misconceptions about open source. So we'll be discussing that. And lastly, there are some good opportunities out there for you if you want to get into open source, and we'll be discussing that. Before I begin with any of this, I want to make this one thing clear, that Rome wasn't built in a day. What I mean by that is that if you listen to this presentation, if you get the quote unquote inspiration and then you do nothing about it, then this presentation is useless. You're not going to get anything out of it. Only if you join. Yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay. I thought Anjali had a question. My voice is breaking. Can anyone confirm that there is a message?
No, actually, there might be an error there, and your voice is unclear.
Oh, my voice is fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I was saying that Rome wasn't built in a day. So by that, I mean that if you just listen to this thing, if you just spend 1 hour into this, getting into the open source thing, then you would achieve nothing at the end of the day. I had a friend in my first year. She started with C++ with me. And when I was in third year, when we were ending third year, I asked, "What are you up to?" She said, "I'm starting with the C++." So, and by that time I had already done a lot of things. So my point is, she was just attending these seminars, these webinars and what all, and not doing anything after getting back home. So if you're planning to do that, it's not going to help you. And I'll discuss more about that later. But for now, let's start with the first slide, and that is, what is FOSS? So first, full form of, obviously you must have heard of this before, free and open source software. But free here does not mean money. Free here means freedom. Freedom to copy, freedom to make derivative codes, freedom to share your work, freedom to run the code and hack your way out of that software. So if, for example, if you buy a Windows, what do you call it, Windows OS, you cannot look into the code of Windows OS. If you do, that would be illegal. You're not allowed to do that. And if you do make modifications in that code, that would be again be illegal. It's under copyright. This is the symbol of copyright. Oh, yeah. This is the symbol of copyright. So basically, you're not allowed to do anything with the code. You're not allowed to share the code. You're not allowed to make derivatives of it. And you're not allowed to copy it. Then there is copyleft code that open source softwares work on, and in copyleft you're allowed to copy the code, you're allowed to share the code and whatnot. So free here stands for freedom with the software that you're using. uh, there is a good simile here, like when you buy a phone, for example, you own the hardware, and in open source you own the software as well. But if you're buying a proprietary software, you don't own the software. So that's a good way to think about it. Next, let's. Any questions about what open source is, by the way? What FOSS is? I'll go to the next slide then. Why work on open source projects? Okay, so the first thing is that when you get to a college, and I've had this discussion 10 times with multiple people, uh, when you get to a college, you write some code, you write your code for an assignment or whatever reason, you write your own code and then you submit it to your teacher, and you and your teacher are the only two people who ever look at that code. You get an X amount of grades for your code, say you get an A grade or whatnot, and but you never find out what the problem with your code is. You just write the code and then you get the marks out of it, but you never improve. You never actually find the problems and you never improve. That's just a repeated cycle that you would go through if you just keep working for assignments. So you want other people to see your code and you want other people to comment on it. So if you're working on open source, other people are going to be using your code. If other people are going to be using your code, they're obviously going to give you feedback, and that feedback would help you improve your code. Second thing is that no company is built by one developer alone. By that, I mean, I don't know why colleges do not promote people to work in teams and assignments are given to individuals. But because when you go to the industry, you will never be given an individual assignment. You will always be working with a team. And working with a team, having a shared understanding of the feature that you're developing is a very important thing. Okay, so again, when you're working on open source, you get to work in a team, and that team would be a global team in most cases, and you will get to interact with people with all over the world. Third point is related to the first point, which is you get free code reviews when you're merging your code to an upstream repository. Basically, when you're merging your code to an existing open source software, someone else would be viewing your code, someone else would be looking at your coding habits, and someone else would be looking at the mistakes that you most frequently make. And that's very good for you, because if you just submit your assignment, again, you're not getting any kind of a feedback on what problems that you make. The best example for it is that most people who start working with me, the freshers, I've noticed that they always name their variables like a, b, c, I, j in the loops. uh, and these variables don't make any sense. So when you're writing a software for production, you always want your variables to make sense so that the other person can understand them. So that's something that I've noticed that a lot of students do, But if you're working on an open source project, you'll realize this very soon that you need to name your variables well. So basically, there is a functional part of the code where your code does something, and then there is a non-functional part of the code where improving or not improving your non-functional part would not actually help the code itself or help the end user itself, but the quality of code would be much better if you keep the non-functional factors in mind. The next point is certificates are useless, knowledge is priceless. So again, a lot of times I see a lot of students going into events and whatnot for certificates. What people don't, I think this is engraved into our school culture, that people do want certificates, but when you go into the industry, when you're giving an interview, nobody cares about your certificates. There is no product being formed out of your certificates. People only care about your knowledge. And when you're working in open source, when you're working in an actual production environment, you get knowledge of an actual working software. Certificates is something that will not help you get a job or get anything in the future. The best thing, I always tell people that the best thing that the certificates can do is that they can provide you with warmth on a cold night because you can burn them.
Is that
The
true?
Yeah, sorry.
Is that true that certificates are useless?
Yeah, to most extent, certificates are useless. I've put an asterisk here. Thank you for actually asking that, because I completely forgot about this asterisk. So certificates are 101% useless. The best they can do is again provide you warmth. But there are things like certification. So for example, there is a certification called CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Associate. So basically, those certifications are not useless. Okay, but the certificates that you get, say for example, at least in my college, there used to be events that our college committees used to organize, and then at the end of the events you'll get a certificate. Those certificates are completely meaningless, and these certifications are very different, and they require you to study, and study very well. First of all, CCN is not a very easy paper. You have to study very well and pass an exam which is extremely difficult. And well, I don't mean to exaggerate the difficulty of that paper, but it's not an easy feat. So those certifications have a value. There is certification by Cisco, there is certification by Red Hat. Those certifications have value, but your local certificates are completely useless, and absolutely nobody's going to ask you for those certificates when you're giving an interview. I've given interviews with multiple companies, and I've asked people who are like in their 40s who take interviews at this point. And the thing is that what they say is that they don't care about they don't even care about what college you're from, especially in the smaller companies. They don't even care about what college you're from. But if you can develop their software, that's where the value is. And if you think about it logically, certificates are not what's producing the end product. Your knowledge is producing the end product. Make sense?
Like I have done lots of coding things and I got the certificates. So does it really count, right? When I'm going for an interview, obviously they need a certificate or something on a paper to know that I know it. They're not gonna give me the computer and say me to make a software, right?
Right. So again, when you're going for an interview, they're not going to. It's not going to make a lot of difference. You may have that paper if that makes you feel confident. That's fine. But they'll ask in the interview. They'll ask you their own questions. They'll ask you their own questions that they think are valuable, and not based on your certificates. So yeah, in the long run, in from a point of view of getting a job, certificates would not help you a lot. If it helps you with your confidence, that's your thing.
So like we just have to say them that we know it without showing them any certification or anything like that, which proves it that we know it.
They're looking for more of a proof when it comes to your knowledge. As in, for example, the last interview I was in, they asked me to create an SQL query, and a difficult SQL query. They didn't ask for my previous experience about uh, whatever I had done with SQL. They just wanted their software required something in that line, so that they asked me. So first of all, there is also this rule that HR always assumes what you're writing in your resume as a fair play. So whatever you write in your resume is considered as truth, and they can ask anything from your resume. So if you mention something like whatever certification you were talking about, if you mention that, you don't actually need that certificate. So if you mention that you joined some kind of a say hackathon and you won that kind of hackathon, it's assumed that you actually won that hackathon. You don't need another proof for it in most cases. And if they do think that you're lying, then that might be a proof, but in most cases they just care about your knowledge. And
That's what I'm
bigger
trying to
companies
say,
may,
sir. Like many people may bluff, right? They can write in a resume whatever they did not did, right? So
right, if they
certifications are
bluff, they
must there.
wouldn't be able to answer the question during the interviews, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So we can go about this discussion a lot because this is engraved in our societies very badly that certificates is what you should be after. But when you're applying for interviews, it doesn't help a lot. The next thing that I would be talking about is you impact the community in a positive manner. So first of all, a lot of people, at least most of you would, as soon as you step out of your college, you would be the tax paying population of our country, and only 3% of our people here pay taxes. So you're at the top 3% already as soon as you step out of your college. That's a big thing. So you have to decide what kind of a person, what kind of a privileged person you have to be. I included this reason to be, I included this reason over here because this has been motivating me a lot. But these four reasons are applicable for everyone. So the next thing is, if you want to work with open source now that you know what open source is, now that you know why you should work on it, and these four reasons, as I've said, are applicable for everyone. So what do you need to get started with it? First is obviously laptop and internet, and thankfully that you're here, you already have both of those. Next thing is hunger for knowledge. I always tell people that software developers are not paid for creating software; they're paid for learning, and you you have to be a constant learner. As in, if you think that you learn XYZ technologies or whatever during your college time and then you will be paid for it later on in life, that's not how it's going to be. You have to be a constant learner, and this field requires you to be on your toes always. What's relevant today might not be relevant tomorrow, and what's relevant tomorrow might not be relevant day after. So you have to always keep learning, you have to always keep skilling up, and that's an essential thing about this field. And if you don't like that idea, which a lot of people don't, then this field is not for you. The next thing is start before you're ready attitude. So this is a discussion that I've had with a lot of people. uh, when people ask me how to get started, I don't even know anything. My answer is also always start before you're ready. Don't wait for a day where you will be starting with something, or being an expert. You will become an expert on something, and then you'll start contributing to open source. The thing is, and again, just like the example that I told you about my friend from first year who was learning C++ in the first year, and yet in the third year she was trying to become an expert in C++ and not actually writing projects. She was just trying to theoretically read C++ and become expert in it. And that's a very impractical goal. You can't do that. So you need to understand the fact that you will never be ready to become an open source developer. You need to start today, and you will have to learn on the fly. The next thing is that you'll need an aim to which you want to work towards. In most cases, that would be an organization. You can start your own project, or you can start your own open source project, or you can, with your college friends, you can create a group and work on that. But the problem with that is that you will never find the mistakes in your code again, because you will just be working on your own thing. So in most cases, I recommend an organization is the best way to go about when working on an open source project. Any questions about this? Mostly people have questions about start before you're ready.
That's the thing, sir. Like even I started learning C++ and C like when I was in first year. Then later on, when I was trying to get some job or something, but I was not getting it because there are some new coding languages in the market and they are getting acquainted, day by day. Then the Python
Right.
came, then some other came, right? So that's the
Right.
thing, sir. We always need to be updated in this sector. Like if you don't know the recent language, you can't work efficiently, right?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I didn't get your question. You're right about that, but I didn't get your question.
I just added something in it. I was not
Oh,
having a
okay.
question.
Okay, okay, fine, fine, fine. So one more thing, don't say the word sir. Sir means slave, I remain. And it's not a very good thing to use in any open source project or even the company I'm working in right now, iCertis, we don't like the word slave, sir. So I'll go to the next thing, which is how do I find an organization that speaks to me? So if you start looking for an organization, which I will do, so there are a lot of open source projects, and I usually recommend you go to Google Summer of Code, and I recommend people to look into open source projects on this list because these are very well funded, good projects going in a right direction, and that's why Google chose them. You can obviously find organizations elsewhere, but this is a good place to get started. But then the question is, how do I find an organization that speaks to me? So I've mentioned 2 points. First thing that you should factor is your spiritual fulfillment. The thing is that if you like, for example, a lot of time people just go for the technologies that they want to work in. For example, I've worked mostly with Python and Django, so I would want to filter things with Django. But if the project that I find that works on Django does not speak to me, it would not be a fulfilling experience for me, right? That would obviously lead me to work. So if you're working for GSoC, you're going to have to work for a lot of hours. And if you don't enjoy it, then obviously it's not going to be a fun experience. So I would recommend putting spiritual fulfillment somewhere in the equation. The second thing that I recommend is check if someone is willing to spend time with your work and what you're doing. First thing that you need to understand that open source developers usually have day jobs as well. So if nobody's available to look into your work frequently, then you're not going to be able to learn a lot, and your goal here is to learn a lot. So sometimes you will find the right person who is willing to mentor you, okay, willing to teach you to get started. If that's the case, then I would say sink your toenails in and don't let go, because learning would be very well if you find a mentor early on. These are the two factors that people don't think about while finding an organization, so I've included them here. The last one is the most obvious one, so, and that is the technology that you work with. So for example, I just said I like to work with Django, so I can filter organization based on Django, and I will find a lot of organizations. But the question then becomes, which organization that I join, which organization do I join? And these factors should help you. Again, this is an answer that depends on you. So I can't really recommend that you go to X page or Y page and do X or Y Z and you'll find the organization. You'll have to do a lot of thinking. I usually recommend go through this entire page. For getting started, go to this entire page, look at what each of the is doing, look at what each of the organization is achieving, shortlist the tasks that you think are absolutely fun and you want to contribute to it. For example, some people want to help other people to become developers. Some people want to help the education sector. Some people want to work in fintech. Some people, fintech is basically financial sector. Some people, for example, I work in an organization that's OpenWisp, that's in network sector. I like that. So different things speak to different people. go through this entire list and try to find out what speaks the best to you. And then when you've shortlisted a couple of organizations, use these two factors to judge which organization is correct for you right now. Again, this is a question that you would not have a lot of questions about us right now. You would most definitely have questions about it later on when you're actually working on it. And when you do, you feel free to reach me about it over here. I will share the link to the presentation as well. Next, let's go to the next step of the process. You found an organization, you've shortlisted what you want, okay, there are some questions, I guess. No, not a question. So yeah, now that you've found an organization, what to do, what are the steps to get from the front page of your organization to writing code for it? And I've laid down 5 steps. First of all, you ensure that you know the basic tools that are required for that particular organization. For example, I've worked with OpenWisp and I go over here. There should be a link. Oh, yeah. There you go. This is the main website, and we mention the technologies that we use in docs page. Oh. Docs. Oh, it's openwisp.io. So the technologies would be somewhere around, probably over here. Yep, Python. Oh no, this is code conventions, hacking Python and Django. So these are the 2 things that are mostly used in OpenWisp. So you can find out about more technologies that we use over here. And similarly, for most organization, you would find the technologies used documented, or you can, when you join an organization, you can talk to the people who are already working on it, and you will find out what tools that they use. On this step, there is a disclaimer that you don't want to spend more than a week learning a language or a tool. The thing is, a lot of times, again, people try to be an expert on a particular tool, but that's not what you want to do. You don't have to be an expert to get started with open source. You have to have the attitude that I mentioned over here. Start before you're ready attitude. So basically, you just need to be familiar with the tool, and then you start before you're ready. And then you reach the second. I hear some noise. Okay. Start reading the documentation of the organization. Mostly you'll find contributors guidelines, or again discussing with the existing contributors. So there is a lot of things that is usually mentioned in the organization guidelines pages. For example, how to get started with it, how to set up the repository, how to what expectations are there from the organization to you, and vice versa. And this will basically give you an in-depth idea if the organization is the correct organization for you and how to get started with it. The next step is going to be setting up the code in your local machine. I've put a note here that this is going to be hard. A lot of times people expect that they would be done with this step in a very short while. But I'll tell you, when I started working on OpenWisp, it took me at least a month to get comfortable and make my first pull request or whatnot. So it does take time, and you have to get used to this thing. Then there is pick a low hanging fruit. So in most organizations, there are issues mentioned with good first issues. And for example, I'll show you on the OpenWisp page. I shared the link today itself. We have this good first issue tag. All the organizations try to make it easier for the new contributors to get started. So you'll, for example, we have this good first issue tag. Other organizations have different ways of marking it further, or for the new contributors, and you'll find it again in their documentation. You'll find it in their documentation, and you have to pick a low hanging fruit and take time to solve that problem. The thing is, when you're solving your initial issues, you're not actually solving the issue itself. These low hanging fruits are usually one liners that you have to change. You're actually trying to get used to the system of making pull requests in that repository, which is itself a very hard thing. So again, like the third step, this is also going to take some time. This is also going to take some patience out of you, and you have to wait for it. uh, then there is repeat the fourth step a couple of times, and by this time you'll realize what you're doing. This should take a month or two, and you shouldn't be surprised about it. Any questions about this? All type of contributions is good. Yes, all type of contribution is good. As in, even if you can't work in as a developer. Actually, I'm not aware about your background. So if you're a developer, you would most likely want to work as a developer because you can contribute in that sense. But if you're not a developer, any kind of contributions is good. You guys are asking a lot of questions in chat. Can you actually open your mic and ask? What if there is no good issues? I want to contribute to boost.org, but I can't find any good issues. This is going to be a difficult thing. See, it's, as I said, it's going to take a lot of time. When you get familiar with the project, you will find easier issues. And if you don't, I usually recommend stick with one issue, stick with an issue that makes logical sense to you, as in you can understand the input and the output that you have to produce. Although you may not know how to do it, but you understand what to do. And once you understand what to do, you have to give it a lot of time, discuss with the developers how to get started, and that would be your way to go. I would recommend you to take that issue and stick with it, give it a lot of time, give it a lot of effort, and that's the only way to do it. This is hard, and I know that, and there is no secret door around it, and you have to give it time. The next question is, will we be assigned a mentor before setting up the code on our machines? If not, how will we be able to solve our doubts? First of all, again, as I said, you will never be assigned a mentor. You will never actually be formally assigned a person. Usually, you would just have some kind of a discussion room. For example, in OpenWISP, we have this general chat room where you can. Sorry. I think the link to
If there's some disturbance, so you can just ignore this.
Yeah, it's shared on the uh, LinkedIn, and you can join without any password. So that's why I think people are joining. Anyway, I'll get back to the point, which was, yeah. For example, in OpenWISP, we have this chat room where you can ask your questions. There is no mentor ever assigned to you. For example, this person started contribution today, and he's asking how to get started, and I replied him, I'm not his mentor by any chance. I have my day job. I have my own things to do. When I'm free, if I'm free, when I can, I help them. Absolutely do not expect any organization to assign anyone to you, because if you do that, if you keep waiting for that, you will never reach the next step. And the important thing is that, first of all, again, I've discussed this in a later slide as well, that you have to understand that the people who are giving you time in open source, consider it as a gift. Okay, and you wouldn't get a lot of gifts. So you have to, because you wouldn't get a lot of time from other developers, you have to give it a lot of time on your own, and that's the only way to get it done. One good thing is that you can this will also teach you to ask questions. So if you ask a very specific question, you will most likely get an answer. If you ask a very vague question, very big question, you will most likely not get an answer. For example, if you ask a question, how to get started with XYZ, you will most likely, people will ignore it because it will take a lot of time for them to answer you. If you read the documentation, which is where you will find most of the information, if you read the documentation well and then ask a very specific question, then most likely people would be able to help you. So asking questions is also a skill which you need to develop. I think I should add it over here. What do you need? What things do you need is again a skill to ask questions. And if you don't have that skill, then you will have a hard time. So I think that answers the question. Anything else I should add to that? Sudha, I think that was Sudha's question, right? Does that make sense to you? Okay, so Shri Lakshmi asks, what do you mean setting up the code locally? Basically, you find a repository. For example, I take this repository. I find it over here. I clone it to my machine and set the code up in my own machine. If I have done it already, never mind. Basically, if I set it up on my own machine and I can run it from my machine itself, then that would mean setting the code up locally. Does that make sense? Meanwhile, I'll read the next question, which is Ujjwal Pandey, what other advantages will we get by contributing in open source other than sharpening a skill? No other advantages. If you're expecting someone would give you a job immediately, that's a wrong expectation. And I would talk about expectations later on as well. But as a college student, I usually recommend people to focus only on skills, and this is a good place to get skills. If you're expecting monetary benefit, yes, this is unpaid. Yeah, this is absolutely unpaid. Which reminds me about a conversation which I had when I was in my second year. I was starting with another open source project, and I sent a message on my college WhatsApp group that I'm doing this XYZ work, and if anyone wants to join, here is the link. Then immediately 15 minutes later, someone messages me, okay, how much would we be paid? I can't find that information anywhere. I responded him, I would pay you absolutely nothing. I'm not getting any money out of it myself, so why would I pay you? Which didn't make a lot of sense to this person. That why would he work for no money? The point is not the money. The point is uh, getting skills, and that's what this will get you. So yeah, this is unpaid. What is your view on competitive coding versus open source? I did not get that. Why is competitive coding versus open source? The competitive coding is a completely different topic, which would competitive coding is basically, if you worked on something like HackerRank, that would be competitive coding. It's not related to open source per se. Open source is a second name of unpaid and no money. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So if you're expecting money, then you're in the wrong place. If you want money, then you'll be better off working on a project that actually earns money, i.e. a company, an enterprise. If you work on enterprise software, you would actually earn money. But which enterprise would hire you without an experience, without some kind of a skill? Anything other than that?
Hey, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
So, Ajay, I wanted to ask something. So basically, there are some people like myself who are into machine learning, and the scope for machine learning in open source is comparatively less as compared to app development and web development. If you're getting my point. And many places it's advised that let's say for example GSoC, right? So if I want to contribute to a certain specific organization, so it's advised that we start contributing beforehand to a specific organization which has been coming for the past 1 or 2 years. But given that machine learning organizations are very less, and they might this has happened to some of my friends that they started contributing to a specific organization, but in the end that organization didn't come. So how to deal with such problems, and how to are you getting my point? So how to deal with this kind of problem?
So first of all, to answer your first question, or not a question, you claimed that there is less opportunity of open source in machine learning. I don't think that's true. There are a lot of organizations that are using machine learning in the backend. I can connect you with a friend of mine, Parth, who's actually who contributed to one of the organization which I do not see over here. I don't remember the name, but he is into machine learning a lot, and he is into open source as well. So he would be able to tell you the specific name of the organizations in machine learning. But I can assure you that it's not like machine learning is not used in open source for any reason or anything like that. It's very much there. It's very much present.
Right,
The
right. The reason why I said that was because I saw some orientation videos and introductory videos to open source and GSoC in particular, and it was like, I'm not saying the opportunities that there aren't any opportunities for machine learning. I'm saying as compared to app development, web development, the opportunities are less in comparison to them, as far as I know. But obviously you have a better understanding and knowledge about it, so I just wanted to clear that out. And also, if you could tell me the full name of a friend, so I'll connect myself, I'll connect with him on LinkedIn and try to have a conversation. That would
His
be good.
name is Parth Sharma. And if you don't find him, you can connect to me. I'll share this presentation, and there is my the link to my LinkedIn is over there. So you can connect to me. I'll help you connect to him. But his name is Parth Sharma, and he'll be able to help you with that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. And the second thing that you said about an organization that you work for about a year and then it's not selected. Yes, that there is that possibility, but don't forget that if you work, so for example, I started working with OpenWIS for uh, GSoC starts in February or March, and I started contributing to OpenWIS in August. So yes, I started well in advance, and if OpenWIS wasn't there in the list of uh, organizations for GSoC that year, I would have applied to a different organization. The thing is that I still learned a lot of things. I still got a lot of experience while working on open source, OpenWIS, both soft and hard skills. And when I say soft skills, I mean getting things done through and with the people. So you need that skill. You need that soft skill to uh, ask the questions and get the answer. So you have to start with any organization that you see fit, and if that organization is not there, you would at least be equipped to get started with the other organization. You would be on a better foot than someone who has never contributed to any open source project. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely makes sense. Also, one last question that I wanted to ask you. What timeline would you suggest an aspirant, an open source aspirant, a GSoC aspirant, during what month he or she should start looking for, like in November, should I start looking for organization that came in past 3 to 4 years that I would like to contribute, and then start giving my open source contribution, or in October, in December? Like, what is the timeline do you think that is perfect for a person to before applying, like a perfect for an aspirant before applying to GSoC, that maximizes his chance of getting in?
I would say start as early as possible. Start today if you can. The first thing is that you may like a project very much, but then you don't find a proper mentor or whatnot. So say you start today, and then you spend the next 2 months with a different XYZ organization, but then you realize it's not working out very well for you, or you wouldn't be able to be a long-term contributor in this project. So you would have enough buffer time to get started with a different project. So I would say start as early as possible. It's not like if you work on X project and then you don't actually apply in it, you're in any loss. You at least learn some new skills, right? So it's not wasting your time in any way. So yeah, that would be my tip. I started in August. If you can start in July, June, just start whenever you can. That would be my tip for that.
Right, right. And I'm sorry, but just one more question I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
So
yeah, sure.
yeah, so like when you started off, when you were a beginner in this field of open source contributions, right? Like open sourcing. So were there any things that were there any mistakes that you made which were very common in beginners? Something that you think like right now when you look back at it, if you knew that mistake, you wouldn't have made it. Like, what are the general mistakes that are made by newcomers that maybe we could avoid right now once we're starting off?
The most common one is that people like get into an XYZ software, and then they expect to get it in 2 days or be able to contribute to it in 2 days. That does not happen. As I said, it takes a month or more. The second thing is that, say for example, you have expertise in machine learning, and the tool that you're contributing to you that does not require any machine learning whatsoever. So I've noticed a lot of young people getting into a project and saying, hey, I know machine learning, let's convert the tool into a machine learning tool. It does not work like that, because there are 15 different people working on the project already, and they wouldn't learn just a new technology for you. They would want to work with the technologies that they're already working with, and you need to get into those technology. These two errors I've seen a lot amongst new developers, and I've written a blog about this as well. If I can find it right now, I think it would be over here. Just let me look for that link. A guide for students to start open source. I'll share this. I've mentioned some things in more detail, that first, incompatible goals. Again, people who are expecting financial benefits out of this, or people who are expecting a job out of this, they're looking at a wrong place. If you want money, go to people who are making money. Open source is not making money, and if you expect money from them, you're expecting something wrong. Again, if you're expecting a job out of an open source, and this has happened, I'm not even kidding, this has happened, that people, new people just join the organization and say, hey, I can work X amount of hours, what role can you give me? I can't give you any role at all. I don't have any role myself. How can I give you a role? So if you're expecting a job, if you're expecting a salary, you're looking at a wrong place. Join a enterprise which is making money. They'll be able to give you money. This is also a very common mistake. People don't read the manual, they don't ask the questions properly, they ask very general questions. So read the documentation very well, so that you can ask good questions that people want to answer. Because again, nobody's paid to help you. They would only help you if they see that their time, that the time that they give you is beneficial for them. Anything else? Toolkit conflict, I've already discussed that. When in Rome, do as the Roman do. And yeah, asking questions, as I've mentioned, is again an important thing. Yeah, these are the common things that I've noticed that almost, not all, but a lot of students do. So I'll share this link so that you can read this. How do I share it? How do I share it? Oh, there is a chat. Share this link so you can read this. And I'll also share this presentation. Yep. Anything else I should add to this?
Just to clarify and summarize, having some experience in open source contribution, no matter which organization it is, and preferably in the organization that we're applying to, and like these are some things that might optimize our chance of getting in. Is there something else that we should focus on, like having some command over Git, or like having some expertise in Git and other like language? Is there something else that we should be good at, that might make us more like that could increase the chances of getting in GSoC and into organization of GSoC?
Right. So there is no, so at least from my point of view, if you've been working from, say, for example, I was working in OpenWIS since August, and I was damn sure I would get into. There was absolutely no reason for me to not get into. I was sure about it because I had covered all the possible aspects that the tool needed. So first thing that you mentioned, being proficient in tools like Git and the tool, whatever tool your organization is using. If you're already contributing to the organization, you're already proficient in the tools that they're using. So for example, I was contributing to OpenWIS since August. So whatever tools the organization was using, I had already proven that I know those tools by working in the organization for 6 months. So if you're just working, that would take care of everything else. I'm not sure, did I answer your question properly?
Yes, absolutely. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool.
Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Any question?
I'm really sorry. I just wanted to ask one last thing. Could you
Yeah.
also, elaborate on the proposal that people have to make, before while applying? Like, what all do you think is very important to be included in the proposal, and what all do you think, many people miss out on, which eventually leads up in their rejection? Like, what are your like advice to a person who's going to who's new to writing proposal, right? So, like,
Right.
what advice?
Right. Two things. One, I would discuss about it if you want. I'll discuss about it in the end. Uh, Two is that the proposal again does not matter. The only thing, the most important thing to a mentor when you're applying to an organization is that would you be able to complete the project, and they need some kind of a proof of that. Mostly what people try to do is that before contribution, I'm not aware of the rules of all the organization, but at least in OpenWIS, what we have a rule that if you want to work in, say, this notifications project, OpenWIS notifications project, so you would have to solve some issues to prove that you would be able to complete the task that you're given during GSoC. So the important thing is that you should be able to prove that you're worthy of this project. And again, we're circling back to this thing that if you're already contributing, you've already proven that thing inherently. So at least in OpenWIS, we don't care much about what is included in the what do you call it, the proposal that you sent. In fact, there is some basic guidelines that is given on the OpenWIS page to create the proposal, but nobody cares about it a lot. That's not the most important thing. That's just a formal thing. The most important thing is if they select you, if they take you in GSoC, would you be able to complete the project? Would you be able to do the task that they assign you to do? That's what the mentors care about the most. Make sense?
Yes,
Hi.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I'll share up more about the draft thing a little later after the presentation. Or if you
Great.
don't have time, you can contact me later.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi,
So
Ajay. Sorry for the abrupt interruption, but I would like that if we can go through the presentation and like then the questions from the chat, the relevant questions from the chat can be read out later, and the questions
sure,
can be asked as per the paucity of the viewer, right?
sure,
Can we
sure,
do
sure.
that? Thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah, sure. So the next thing is that the basic tools that you would need for becoming a open source developer is that you need to get familiar with the command line. Most of the tools that you are going to be using would be on Linux. So I would assume you should already get started with Linux. If you haven't, you should. And if you get in, when you get into Linux, the point is not to use the UI. The point is to get familiar with the command line. If you don't get familiar with the command line, you wouldn't actually be able to solve the problems, and you would basically defeat the purpose of uh, getting into the Linux, why softwares are developed on Linux. And the reason is because we have a very beautiful command line. So get familiar with that. If you need help, actually I'll include some, I have included some links for getting started with Linux in the end of the presentation. The next tool that you need to get proficient with is Git. Git is basically a tool that allows you to work in team. So basically, say for example, I want this code on my machine, I can use Git to clone this code to my machine and work on it, and then send the changes that I make to the upstream, the repository where I initially copied this code. So basically what Git is doing is Git is solving the problem of letting multiple people work on the same code without having to make them wait for each other's work. A lot of people can work parallelly on the same code, and that's what Git is doing. So a lot of people are confused about between Git, GitLab, and GitHub. So basically, GitHub is the site where you it's just basically a giant repository. For example, Facebook is a lot of a very big repositories for finding your posts, but post itself is an entity that you can find other places as well. For example, Twitter. So you can find posts on Twitter and on Facebook, but post is just a single entity that it in itself does not rely on these website, Twitter or Facebook. It's basically what you make. It's basically you conversing with people. Similarly, Git is the tool that allows you to work on the software. It allows you to clone the repository and work with multiple people. But where you can find the project is GitHub and GitLab. GitLab and GitHub are basically alternatives of each other. GitLab is the open source one, and GitHub is the one that is owned by Microsoft. I've included the small picture here that imagine that you're working over here and this is the initial code that you copied. This is a change that you make. This is a change that you make. This is another change that you make. And this is another person working, and you want to merge your thing into their thing, into their changes. So basically Git allows you to do that in a very simple way. It's a version control system that allows you to work in teams. Any questions about it? Is that clear? This is a very quick introduction. Any questions about, are you able to understand it? Okay, then I'll move on. The next thing is, are my expectations correct? So as we discussed quite in depth, people who are expecting money, they're at a wrong place. Open source is not for making money. At the same time, I would want to clarify that I made more money than my entire class combined. How? Because knowledge pays, non-profits don't. If you expect open source to pay you, they will not pay you. But when you have the proper knowledge, people who need things done will pay you because you've already proven that you have the knowledge. So open source itself is not the place to make money, but it is a place to make knowledge, to get knowledge. And once you have that, money wouldn't be a problem. But if this is the main thing that you want, if money is the main thing that you want, you should actually look for enterprise, not open source. The next thing is cool shirts, stickers, and gifts. A lot of people start contributing to open source for goodies. Again, that's not something that you should be expecting, because you would be disappointed. Because if you work for a for-profit organization, it can shower you with a lot of gifts. If you work for a non-profit, again, it does not have enough resources. So if that's the thing that you want, again, enterprise is for you, not open source. The last point is the attention and help. So someone asked in the chat, would a mentor be assigned to me? So that's a wrong expectation. Again, do not expect anyone to be there for you when you need help, because they have their own jobs as well. You need to build your skill in asking the questions in the correct fashion so that people actually help you. And that wouldn't be always true. You would not always find answers. You would have to spend a lot of effort from your end before someone would actually help you. So if you're expecting attention and help, that would be an incorrect expectation from open source, because people have their own things to do. Again, the thing that I was mentioning, thank them for the gift. Basically, this quote is here: people have their day jobs, yet they choose to help you. Thank them for this gift, treat it as a gift, and excuse them for the absence, because again, a lot of organization that you would join, you wouldn't find a lot of people. And people do get, people do get pissed off about why no one is helping me. Did I do something wrong? This has happened with me multiple times, but you can't expect people to always help you. They have their own thing. You have to understand that, and you have to work with that assumption that they can't help you. The next thing is getting opportunities. So FOSSEE fellowship is a fellowship that starts in the month of in the end of February, and you can go to their website. And this is a fellowship that is organized by IIT Bombay every year. And yep, there it is. It's already done this year, of course, but this is a great organization to get started with free and open source softwares. And the next one is Google Summer of Code. Most of you know about it, but those who don't, let me introduce you. Google Summer of Code is again an open source. Basically, what you have to do in Google Summer of Code is that you make a proposal, and in that proposal, you mention what change you can bring to an open source software. From the list that I had opened over here, you can choose any of the projects that Google selects, and you can uh, make any change. You can propose any change to that software, and if the software developers of this organization and Google finds this to be a useful change, then you would be accepted in Google Summer of Code, and for the next 3 months you would be making that change, and it's an amazing opportunity to get started again. uh, Another opportunity is Outreachy. Outreachy is similar to Google Summer of Code, except it's only for women or people who are discriminated in any way in the software industry. So it's again an amazing opportunity, and it's as good as Google Summer of Code. It's not as famous as Google Summer of Code, but trust me, it's all as good. I have multiple friends who have had great experience with Outreachy, and you should definitely look into it. Outreachy, this is their website, and you can definitely look into it. There are 2 times that Outreach happens in a year, and as an Indian, if you're in India, you can only apply in the summer one, which has the same timeline as the Google Summer of Code, which is it starts around February and March, and and you can apply during that period, and you have to keep contributing until August. This both of them have the same timeline. The next one is Hacktoberfest, which happens next month, which is the month of October. And what you have to do in this one is that whatever organization that you contribute to in on GitHub, say for example, you take this particular project, you contribute to it. If you make 5 pull requests, you get to plant a tree uh, or get a shirt. Depends on you which one you want to do. But it's an amazing opportunity to get started, because a lot of people would be marking their issues with the tag Hacktoberfest. For example, we have this good first issue tag. There would be a lot of people who would be marking their issues for Hacktoberfest. This is basically for, oh, I spelled it wrong most probably, uh, which is basically good for you, because these issues that they mark out for you would be the easier issues, and it's a good starting point. It's not as big as the other 3 competitions that I've mentioned, but it's a good starting point for you. And since it's the very next month, so a lot of you would be able to get into this one quite easily. These 3 are for summer, so it will take a time, which is great for you because you need time to develop your skills. The next thing is that I started my presentation with saying that Rome wasn't built in a day. So when you're done watching this presentation, when you're done with this thing, these are the 7 things that you can read. I've marked these, given these links that you can go to and read about them. For example, I'll take this one. This is basically a lot of common misconceptions and things that people do not get when they're starting out with software development, and this one clears those perceptions. So for example, I just said sir and ma'am are not the preferred words to use when addressing someone. Use the first name. Then there is no emotion in sentiment. I'll give you a story about this one, that I had a friend who would leave college at 6 and reach home at 7, and then they have to do assignment, and I asked her, why don't you contribute? And she would say that I get tired, I complete my assignments, I do this, that, and at the end of the day I am done, I don't have any energy. But she's very comfortable saying that to me. Try saying that to the person who's coming to hire you. They don't care. So you have to be thick-skinned. So there are a lot of things like this that need to be said but are not usually said. So this particular presentation covers that. Then there are some other guides, like for example, someone asked that the things that mostly people do wrong. I have discussed it over here. Then there are some other then there are some other steps that freshers should do. So I've discussed that over here. So these are the next steps that you can take after this presentation to get started with the things. And when you're done with that, you most probably would want to go to this Google Summer of Code page and search for organization, either that or the outreach page, and then search for the organization. Whatever you do, you have to start looking for an organization, and that would be the only way to successfully uh, get started with things. And that's about it. And it's already 8:10, so yeah, it already took more than an hour and 17 slides. So let's start with the questions then. Anything?
I think Ajay, the previous questions have been answered in the talk as far as I have seen. And there is a question in the chat by Purhan Kaushik. He asks that I know Django and Node.js and REST APIs that bind them together. Is OpenWisp the right choice for me? So that's his question. He is the
Again,
Gitter guy that you perhaps talked to today. So it's a small world.
oh, nice, nice. So again, my factors that I would give you to select an organization would be these. If networking and basically the problems that OpenWisp is solving are for you, then you're the right person. It's not just about the tools. The tools that Django and Node.js, you can find these tools in a lot of organizations. You have to find something that speaks to you, and for that you need, first of all, spiritual fulfillment with that uh, organization. And I didn't mention this thing. It's perfectly fine to not know your spiritual fulfillment at this point in your life because you're very young. Uh, but in that case, if you don't know what your spiritual calling is, I would recommend you to go with whatever feels right at this point. And the second thing is someone willing to spend time with you? Yeah, definitely. When it comes to OpenWisp, I'm almost always there. And when I'm not, other people are there. So yeah, there are a lot of people in OpenWisp. So second point is covered. You just need the first one. Is this your spiritual calling? And if it is, then yeah, this is the right organization to get started with. I read a question, how to prepare for Google Summer of Code. I am first year student, what to learn. अब ये वो बात होगी, राम कहानी खत्म, राम कौन है? तो basically you need these things to get started with open source, and you need nothing else. You don't need any specific technology. You just need an organization. You need a hunger for knowledge, and that's all you need. You do not need any specific thing without which you cannot get started with uh, the open source.
Hi Ajay, sorry if I'm interrupting again, but just to adding to that, this entire webinar session will be put on our YouTube channel at IEEE MSIT. So the person who has asked the question, they can like refer to our YouTube channel. They can see the entire session there.
Yes, that's great. That's great. Anything else? Melody इतनी chocolatey क्यों है? Anyone? Been asking that for a long time.
I guess it's all done now.
Very silent group, I must say.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Ajay. So with this, we have come towards the end of our session. Thank you so much for taking out time to be here and addressing the students and addressing all of their doubts. It was truly an insightful event. And
Thank
also thanks
you.
to everyone who attended. You guys were amazing and you guys were very interactive. So thank you so much. So yeah.
Great, great. And if anyone wants to contact me later, I have given the link to this presentation, which you can reach me at LinkedIn and ask whatever questions you have about getting started with open source. Okay, that's all from my end.
I've already sent you a message on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for this session, Ajay. It was a wonderful session, and am sure that this was very helpful for first and second year students who are just beginning in who have just started the open source adventure, who have just embarked on it, and it will be very much helpful for them. Thank you so much, Ajay, once again.
Thank you for inviting me.